Yes, of course.
A lot of people say that narcissists can't change. Narcissists, they can't change. What's your thoughts on that?
Nobody can change. Doesn't matter really who you are. I think people can make minor adjustments, but there is this show on TV where these people buy old houses, rundown houses. They put a bid in without really seeing what the house looks like on the inside. And then they get the house for about maybe $500,000 or $1 million. They go in and it's a dump. And then they have to make a decision. Are they going to do a simple remodeling? And if they do so, are they going to make some profit? Or do they have to bring the bulldozer in, get rid of most of the house and rebuild it again? If you and I are in a relationship and you tell me that I should put the dishes in a certain way in the dishwasher, with some practice I can do it. And it's not a big deal, just washing dishes and all that. If on the other hand, I had a student some years ago, very, very nice young man, and he had become addicted to porn. And he got accepted to San Francisco State. He really liked this young woman that he ran into. The only problem is once you become hooked on porn, something happens to the way you look at women, something happens to the way you experience looking at women. And he wanted to go beyond that. He wanted for the first time to be in a relatively healthy relationship, not one that just revolves around just physical grinding. And he found that for him, it's nearly impossible. If you're talking about anyone who's addicted to a certain pattern and thinking and feeling, it's really, really, really tough. And the other thing is self-love is very organic. All of us in this class love who we are, what we are, even if you're angry. You take that anger, and what you fail to see is that anger gives you meaning. It has given you meaning and power. Let's say you're angry at your father, and that anger has given you enough meaning and purpose so that you look for a good therapist, that every time you and your husband get into a tiff, you say, well, this is my father's doing. I blame him every time your father comes and asks for you to forgive him. You blame him for everything. So in as much as most of us complain about some of our issues, the truth is they are profoundly valuable to us. And we don't really know what to do if they were not there. If you've been seeing a therapist for the past 20 years and all of a sudden you had this wonderful breaking, opening of, you gain some insights. And for the first time in your life, you realize you don't really need a therapist. You don't need to blame your father. And now you have this huge space opening up inside you. So I'm sure we talked about this. Narcia is a Greek mythical figure in quest of figuring out who and what he or she is, coming to realize most of the reflections that they see about themselves are distorted, are lies. And then after a while, decides to just sit somewhere very quietly until that reflection becomes clear. So for the first time, after patiently sitting for many, many years, ultimately the waters come down and he's able to actually see what he looks like, and he likes it. You know, Queen, I'm an immigrant, but I speak my language, and I read my language, and I sing my language. I have a culture I can go back to. That becomes my home. And the older I get, the more I return. If you happen to be, say, a person of color here in this country, where your history has revealed to you after much study that your language has been taken away, your religion has been taken away, the cultural identity has been taken away, and you're basically a blank floppy disk or a flash drive, then what you are is simply a blank slate ready for this brand new culture to program you. And once it does, then you'll slowly find yourself as a finished product. And you look inside into this mirror to see if you can figure out your reflection, only to realize that what you're getting back is not really who you are. You're not comfortable with it. And yet, that's the only thing that you have. So it's good to be Narcia or Narcissus. That, you know, I think I have shared the story. Hello. When I was in high school, I used to have a friend. His name was Paul Nakaida. We went to high school together. We won the tennis team together. We were the best of friends. So he lived in Davis. I had moved to Roseville to wash cars with my parents. And we were both going to Sacramento State University. As we were walking by the cafeteria, there was this show about Japanese heritage. And his parents were Japanese. And so he said, I'm curious, I want to go in and see what it looks like. For some strange reason, for the first time he came out saying, Amir, I don't think I'm American. I think I'm Japanese, even though he was born here. And he didn't speak the language either. And so he went back to Japan, got married, didn't come back to the States for the next 10 years. You know, that's a good Narcia to be. That you look for something, you don't know what it is that you're looking for, but you're tired of all the reflections, all the self-images. And then after much study, much research, much journeying, there comes a point where you just sit still. And then there is this, opening. Not all of us are lucky to experience that, but some are. If you're talking about a sort of Narcia that turns you into a Trump-like or an Elon Musk-like, then you may have some issues on your hand. Some aspects of Narcia creates a good amount of poverty, which is healthy. Like, a woman who divorces after 5 or 6 or 10 years, you're not just getting rid of this man, but you're also getting rid of lots of hopes and dreams and fantasies you had in your head. And so women are really good at this, where they sit somewhere, they're really sad and depressed, lonely, miserable, and they begin to think, my mom told me this was the wrong guy, I knew it was the wrong guy, why did I not listen to myself? And you go through this introspection. And it may be the 21st century, but you become like a Socrates. An unexamined life is not worth living. And for the first time, you realize you're actually examining in a very in-depth way. That's a good place to be. Men, on the other hand, they don't really know how to deal with this stuff too well. So the pain and the misery that they're going through, they go to a bar, they find a man or a woman or a dog or a rat, they take that thing home and they have sex with it. And they do this over and over and over again. And they become like a Hugh Hefner of sorts until they're 70 or 80 or 90. That's the time where they sit and they begin to reflect. But it's a little too late. I know. Good luck.
Thank you.
Hello. EJ.
I have a couple of questions. One is just about the campus opposed to the second assignment, but not the module to go with it?
They're published.
Is it,
Yeah, I just forgotten. Yeah.
We'll talk about beauty being in the eye of the beholder, and the personal opinion affects what people consider beautiful and attractive. But there's also a very, real, objective source of beauty that you can observe in nature, patterns, symmetry, and things like that. So people who say that they find beauty in things that are objectively not, are they just stupid, or do they have some kind of perspective that most people lack?
Hello. So I don't really understand your question. It's too complex. So let me simplify, just for me, not so much for you. I'm your dad and you're my kid. I'm 16, you're 20. Are you a parent? So you're very deficient in that particular stage or realm. So what I've been dealing with you, of course, is that you're kind of lazy. You don't take school seriously. You don't take money seriously. You don't take your future seriously. You live your life very subjectively, in the sense that it's your life, you're an individual, you can do with it whatever you want. You're over the age of 18, so you're an adult now, right? All that BS that people talk about. So despite being so poor, intellectually, physically, emotionally, you're rich in imagination. I, on the other hand, used to be very rich in imagination, but life slapped those things away. Now I am rich in reality, very poor in imagination, because I know they're not going to pass the test of time in life. So you come home with a young woman, and that's assuming that you are a hetero. Okay. And I say, who is she? And you say, well, I love her. You've never read a book in your life? Actually, I've never seen it. Most of the videos you watched are nonsense. You're not the sort of a kid who sits and thinks about things seriously. You're just guided by, first, your feelings, second, your penis. And me, as your parent, looks at you and says, this guy's nuts. I look at this young woman, sure, as a human being, she's okay. But as a future companion, no good. She's just yet another distraction to you just growing up and maturing a little bit. And you have read some poem from Shakespeare or from Hafiz, that if you look at this woman through my eyes, you will see God. But since you only look at this young woman from your own eyes, Dad, all you see is junk. Okay. And so you try to kind of corner me with such romantic nonsense. The only thing that's valuable for me is your future. And that's about 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the line. I'm being as objective as possible. I'm not God. Am I going to be judgmental? Absolutely. Am I limited by experience? Definitely. Am I just a human being with a limited amount of experience and access to things? Absolutely. Right? Am I going to demonize this woman? Yes. Am I going to assault you, harass you, brutalize you? Yes. Is it my job as your parent? Absolutely. My job is to protect you, not to encourage your fantasies. Okay? Am I being objective? No. Am I being subjective? Yes. Is my subjectivity rooted in fact and experiences as much as life has afforded me? Am I going to crush you? I'll do the best I can. Are you going to tell me, well, Dad, you're a preacher. You go on the stage every day and you talk about compassion and generosity. Everything you're saying and doing is the exact opposite. I say to you, lion and the lamb must lie together. Yes, lamb is creativity, lamb is love, lamb is all this, but lion, man, that's about life. So the point I'm trying to make, I suppose, is really nothing. You know, wintertime, go to Yosemite. And you'll have these clear nights. The moon comes out, the snow is everywhere, and everything turns like this bluish color. And it's beautiful. And it's amazing. There's giant redwoods, you know. It's not something you can find in the city space. But the truth is, after a couple of days, you need to come back to Oakland and attend to your business. Nature gave you 5 minutes of beauty, but the truth is, you have to come back to ugliness. That's your job. If you're hanging out with 20-year-olds, EJ, I am sure all of you will sit together and say, that woman is very, very attractive. If you hang out with some mature people, there's a good chance that they'll kind of crush you on your dreams. It depends on your surrounding. "5,000 years of recorded history, and everybody says something different about beauty, about God, about life, about meaning, about purpose. The question is, which one, you know, appeals to you, and then you follow that until you're proven wrong." Devante? Nothing? Okay. Why? Yes, of course. Hello. How are you? Leah?
In terms of Aesop's fable, how can the city mouse and the country mouse learn to appreciate what they have?
City mouse?
Yeah.
Who's a city mouse?
The city mouse and the country mouse? Where the country mouse,
That lives in the forest?
yeah. He wants what the city mouse has, and the city mouse wants what the country mouse. But I think I'm missing one thing, or something like that.
This is the Epic of Gilgamesh, you said? Wait, what did he say?
Aesop's fable.
Oh, Aesop's
story
fable.
of the two mouses.
I think I just made that up. Or did you make that up? I don't really know the story.
He mentioned Aesop's fable, so he mentioned Aesop's fable.
No, I know, but I just don't remember that story. Who said that story?
Misinterpreting it or misremembering it. But I think there was a story about like two people in different places, or maybe two animals, and one of them wants what the other has, and the other wants what the other has.
It just reminds me of another story. I can't really talk about the story that you just mentioned, but there's a story about relationships are like bathrooms. Those who are outside want to go in, and those who are in want to go out. So if you're single, you see two people holding hands, you say, yes, I want that. The two people who are holding hands and see someone walking by themselves, one of them says, I want that. So envy is always going to be there. You know. Yeah, I don't know. Do you have anything else? Are you sure? My apologies. Yeah. Aesop was a really poor fellow.
I don't know, maybe it was.
Yeah.
Great. So, they say, like, I have a favorite rapper, Kevin Gates, or whatever.
You have a what?
Kevin Gates.
Okay.
But yeah, he's a Muslim guy, whatever, and he practices this thing called semen retention because it has, I guess, some kind of something over you. But what do you think about that? It doesn't really like the chemical imbalance or something, too much sex. Or when you're, yeah.
You got to do this over again.
How do you feel about semen retention and what does that do?
SEMA?
Semen, like semen retention.
Oh, semen retention.
Got it.
What is that? I'm just kidding. Okay. This must be like an episode of Twilight Zone. It's stupid.
Go there.
No, it's just stupid. Do such things exist? Yes. Can such things exist in the American culture? No. Do people practice it? Yeah. Does it worth anything? No, it's useless. Do people smoke weed? Absolutely. Are drugs fun? Yes. How many do you see turning out like Aldous Huxley, Carlos Castaneda? None. Do people practice Christianity? Yes. How many turn out to be like Jesus Christ? None. Over 1 billion Hindus. How many turn out to be like Mahatma Gandhi? None. Temple prostitution was an ancient practice, beautiful practice. It used to house young women. Those women would be trained in the art of sex, and then they would go out choosing the right men so they could give them a glimpse of transcendence, beauty, divinity, God. But that was like 5,000 fucking years ago. Not now. But I do understand the absence of meaning and purpose, the fact that this culture revolves around entertainment, pleasure, novelty, and people will do whatever they can to have an access, an experience of sorts. And we are people who justify all sorts of crazy things. You know, in the 1970s, America had become a hub for all these teachers from the Near East, the Middle East. And so they came. You know, one in particular was Ramana Mahesh Yogi, the founder of this thing called Transcendental Meditation. And so he had come to this conclusion that inside every human being is like this kingdom of God. This kingdom of God has a gate. This gate has a keyhole. This keyhole has a key. And this key can be given to you if you work with that particular organization. And the key is a syllabus, a syllable. In other words, there is a word that lives inside you. If you work with someone and that person can find the right word that lives inside you, bring it out and give it to you. And then you chant this word like 50,000 times a day, eventually you'll experience the opening. You'll become your true self. And so the first thing they do, no different than Scientology, the thing that they do is they imagine like I am part of that particular cult. You come to me saying, I'm here. I want to get to know who I am. Say, Queen, I see the magic inside you. Yes, and I know the word that you need. It's called Coca-Cola. But for me to give it to you, it's going to cost you some money. Tell me how much money you got. You say, well, I got like 10,000. It'll cost you 9,500. Yeah, for a Coke. But I'm not going to give you the word just yet. First, I'll take your money. Then I'll give you the word. Then you'll go home, of course, and you'll say Coca-Cola, Coca-Cola, Coca-Cola. No doubt that you will have some experience. But then you'll drop back into the life that you have, and you won't like it. You have to be very, very careful when you walk into any community that houses a lot of people who suffer from emotional poverty. If your relationship is rocky, Queen, it won't be a difficult task for any man to enter your life. You're just looking for inspiration. The best students are those who are rich. And then slowly you make them poor. That becomes a valuable student. One, Devante.
You feel like romance is like a way to control people?
Romance? No,
I all the time that love fizzles out. Patience don't really matter. Always get some dates. So you say romance is just a form of love. You say
I think romance is great, you know, and I think there is a stage for it. There's a time for it. But I think if your entire relationship is founded, the pillar that it rests on is one of, say, romance and sex and just pleasure, it's bound to fizzle away. Now, one of the things, again, you can't talk about romance without talking about the culture, and you can't talk about the culture without talking about all sorts of things that exist in it: advertisement, media, porn, pleasure, capitalism, divorce, mental illness, depression, loneliness. The more of those things that you're familiar with, then you can study romance and why people gravitate towards it. The truth is, relationships are tough. I mean, they're like taking a class that's going to last for about 2, 3, 4, 5 years. I mean, every single day you have to come and sit in the classroom, take notes, pay attention, and you're going to be quizzed. No one's going to pass the class. Everyone's going to fail, right? So, and that's not just about romantic, it's just all relationships. And being in school is tough. I mean, getting a bachelor's degree and then pursuing a master's or a PhD, these are tough things to do. Be living with your parents, that's a tough thing to do. Wrestling with your siblings, another tough thing to do. Having friends and keeping those friends, despite all the frictions existing, these are tough things. Romance is like this Band-Aid that you put on everything that's difficult in life. Add to the fact that, this is a culture that's like Costco. Well, you don't like Stephanie, go out with Mia. You're done with Mia, go with, Ali. You're done with Ali, well, just go with EJ. When you realize that no gender works for you, well, then buy a fucking dog. That's the way this culture works. But one of the nice things about romance is it is founded on physical attraction, okay? And then you spend a lot of time with another human being, and in spending time, you create a lot of stories. They become the super glue of the relationship. And then that history binds you together, and just in case you want to leave the relationship, the narratives create enough shame and guilt to keep the both of you together. And that grinding process, if you have a relatively healthy GPS, like your parents had a difficult time in their relationship, but they stuck together. There is this wonderful story that is given to us by Plato. It's about, imagine you go home and you grab an apple, and grab a very, very dull knife, or in fact, use a spoon to cut the apple in half. And what you find is once the apple has been cut in half, there are two very, very jagged edges. Okay? That's you and that's me. We come from different cultures, we have different histories, we have different pasts, we have different desires, different pursuits and expectations. That's who and what we are. And yet we are physically attracted. But there is nothing harmonious about us. So what you do for the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years is I come home, I'm angry, but you know that you should just keep your mouth shut. Sometimes I come home and you're angry, I keep my mouth shut. This is the grinding process. And if you're able to just grind against each other, after like 5, 10 years, you realize these jagged edges now are now very, very smooth. Now you know what lines you can cross, what lines you can cross, what lines you can bend. And that's only because you've been in the business of, confronting and wrestling with issues for like 10, 15, 20 years. That's not the culture in which we live. And maybe marriage happens to be one of those institutions that has outlived its usefulness. Elijah Muhammad was good. Malcolm X was good at a certain point. This is a different generation. Mahatma Gandhi was good at some point in uniting the Indians, but he has no function anymore. It's like Jesus Christ, 2,000 years ago versus now. Are you kidding? So, romance is good. You should watch that movie by Woody Allen, Whatever Works. It's a good movie. You and I have entered an age where there is no meaning. There is nothing out there that can actually nourish us. So, if you go to a coffee shop and there's a young man or a woman that, attracts you, nothing wrong with going to them, saying, can I buy you a cup of coffee? Enjoying, yourself for an hour with another human being whose company you can enjoy. You know, when you're really, 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 really poor, even rocks taste like bread. Matthew,
Yes.
yeah.
What roles do superstitions play in our lives? Might they influence our decisions in ways that we don't really realize are superstitions?
Let's talk about mental illness. In the Gospel of Mark, or I think it's the Gospel of Mark. You guys know what Gospels are, right? They're like the New Testament. It's the story of Jesus Christ, right? So all of a sudden, as he's giving a sermon, this kid walks in and he starts screaming and throwing benches around and lanterns around. And his father all of a sudden comes in, looks at Jesus and says, my son, you know, he's been possessed by Satan for the past, like ever since he was born. Help him. And so Jesus silences the crowds, you know, goes and stares this guy directly in the eye and says, Satan, leave him. All of a sudden, Satan goes back home. And this kid looks at, you know, the sage and says, thank you. The father says, thank you. And for the first time, this kid looks at his father and says, Father, it's good to see you. Imagine if you had, let's say I'm your dad, and I suffer from some mental issues, and I behave very much like this kid did some 2,000 years ago, and you take me to a therapist or some institute. And all of a sudden the doctor comes forth and says, he doesn't need medication, he needs exorcism. And this therapist or doctor looks at me and says, Satan, he's possessed by Satan, your father, leave him. There's a good chance that you're going to remove me from that particular space. You say, what kind of a doctor is this? So the first thing is that in different periods in history, we believe in certain things. We hold them to be sacred, kind of like the tarot cards, like astronomy and astrology. As time passes, as culture changes and shifts, as philosophies of life begins to kind of transform, transition, that which was once held to be sacred now becomes categorized as superstitious. You know, my grandmother, who lived to be 94, every time she lost something, there is a passage in the Quran she would always repeat 50, 60 times. Why? Because the verse is about just in case you lose something, keep repeating this particular verse and you'll find it. And sure, by chance, you know, maybe she found what she had been looking for. But she actually believed that. For the rest of us, especially for those of us who've read a few books, who are a bit more rational, you know, you kind of listen to your grandmother and say, what the hell is wrong with this woman? If you believe in something, you believe in it. It works. It has powers. It has magic in it. Do you have kids? When you do have them watch Harry Potter, all the 8, 9 episodes. They'll fall in love. They'll force you to go to New York to Harry Potter store and buy them some wands. And they'll go like this to you, hoping that you will just magically disappear. So they could watch TV or have buckets of ice cream, right? They believe that. But you know, your story is a bit different.
The same idea of superstition. There is something I learned and I've seen so far. There is Japanese are very evolved and advanced culture, right? I've been learning the language for a while now. But every time you learn a language, you learn a lot of new terms, new words, new beliefs, and also new superstitions. One of them is that they believe that the number 4 is a very bad number. So they avoid that number regardless.
Yeah.
They don't have number 4 nowhere in the hospital because it means dead. They refer to the number in a different way, so they don't say the same way that means dead. So in that area that even when the humans are so evolved and advanced and everything, but still they have the idea that something really some number can predict something so bad. So other people believe that some birds bring bad omens
Yeah.
to them, but in other cultures, the same bird brings hope to them. So
Yeah, well, as long as you believe it, it's true.
So do they have number 4 in the calendar?
yes, but they write it differently. They don't say shine. They say John. So they avoid it.
Okay, so like, if a building has 4 stories, it's like building is
They,
3A,
yeah, no,
3B.
yeah, there's
Yeah.
no four. In the continental, there is no number 4 in the rooms. It's not.
Imagine you were a Japanese lady and you fell in love with a man whose name was 4.
It's the second Andrew.
Leslie,
That's what you said.
this is so boring. Leslie,
What is like the most unique film you've watched and why? Because there's lots of really good books, but for me especially, I really love films. But have a lot because people put their thoughts into it. They find a way to communicate what they want to communicate to people. I was just wondering, you as a philosophy professor, and since you know more about, well, you always talk about specific things, I would really like to know what, like a film that has caught your attention that has just
you know, the truth is you can't eat pizza every day. At a certain point, decide that pizza is going to force you to vomit. I think emotionally and intellectually, we have these like taste buds as well, that you desire different things at different times. And I don't know how those desires come about. Maybe sometimes you just don't want to be married and you watch a movie that has to do with some guy who was married and left their family in hopes of finding something better. Sometimes maybe you have this incurable disease and you want to figure out how do people cope with this. And you happen to have heard from somewhere that Michael Douglas played this in this character. You know, some guy who had cancer, didn't know what to do with the disease, didn't know what to do with life, didn't know what to do with death. And so to distract himself from cancer or imminent death, he would just have sex with anybody and anything. Sometimes you kind of miss these parts of yourself that have wings and you can soar to the sky. And maybe you'll watch the movie like The Matrix, where you're down here stuck in metacortex. Other people are just burdening you from the time you wake up to the time you go to bed. And once in a while you say, is there anyone who can walk into my life and inspire me? You begin to look for a Morpheus. You know, sometimes you're just captured by the storyline of like a movie like The Horse Whisperer, or you just like someone like Robert Redford and you watch all the movies that he has, you know. So it really depends on, first of all, what you've been exposed to. And I think it's always good to have a huge list of movies or books or dishes. One of the things that they have discovered about when you're an expecting mother, when the potential life inside you is growing, they have come to realize that if mothers are able to eat as many diverse foods as they possibly can, the palate of this newborn will be as diverse as the mother's. If on the other hand, you just eat Cheerios, there's a good chance that this kid, when he or she come out, they're not going to be as diverse as possible. So you'll have difficulty feeding them the food that you want to give them. So if you have a nice collection of movies, nice collection of books, nice collection of friends, you know, then at different junctures in your life where your mood changes, your feelings changes, your thought changes, you're just at a different stage in life, then you'll have a better way of expressing yourself or actually seeing your own reflection. There are no favorites. You know, I have a limited amount of experience with movies and I keep going back to them. I don't watch new movies. First, I don't really have time. First, most of the movies these days are just crappy. You know, there are some scenes once in a while that come to mind, like the movie Split. I don't know if you guys have seen it. So the very last scene, he's there, he's about to like just kill this other young woman, but he comes to realize that she has cut herself throughout her life. Now, cutting itself is a very interesting phenomenon that people do, to get rid of one pain by imposing another kind of pain on yourself, as a form of distraction. And the last scene is very, profoundly moving, where he looks at this young woman and says, you have had pain, and you can see, you can feel, and I don't want to kill you because you're like a saint. And she tears up because for the first time, someone understands the reason as to why she's cut herself and she has so much pain on the inside. The difficulty is just sitting and watching the entire 2 hours. So it's good to have the remote in your hand, and fast forward to the scenes that can kind of move you emotionally. Yeah. Being young, and if you happen to be hetero, have lots of the opposite sex around you, your own age. Look at them very carefully, study them very carefully, take them to your parents very, very carefully. And then with your own intelligence, in addition to your parents, But if you only is one, no good. Yeah. Brandon, yes. It's all right, man. I'm never. Anything? Jordan? Okay. Yeah, Leah. Sorry.
When did humanity become capable of independence? Why did people start questioning the church, the authority, and the lifestyle?
When do you question anything? Have you thought about dropping this class? Has anyone here thought about possibly dropping the class?
Okay, wait. Honestly, the first class, I was a little nervous. I was like, oh my gosh, this is like a lot. He has a very unorthodox way of teaching. Like, I don't know if I can continue with this, but at the same time, I understand. So, yeah, like I feel like I understand your humor or lack thereof, so I feel like I get you. Like it works for us. So, yeah.
So, number one, there are things you expect, there are things you're in the habit of doing, and all of a sudden there is a disruption. That disruption goes against all the things you've experienced. Okay, imagine you come to this class and every class period is very, very exciting. Today you come and you yawn, for example, and you find it to be boring. And that boredom goes against everything that you've experienced thus far. And then you go home saying, well, there's still time to drop. Okay, so whenever you and I question anything, especially intimately and intensely and seriously, it's because something about you doesn't feel right. When do people begin to talk about maybe leaving their companion? Is it because they're having lots of fun? Is it because they find each other to be compatible? No. Is it because they're at this initial stage of the romantic stage? The answer is no. When things begin to reveal themselves a little difficult, time-consuming, that you need some insight, some cleverness, some cunningness to you, then you say, is it worth it? Now you begin to question, okay? So even when you look at the invention of the wheel, for example, it's really tough to put stuff on your shoulders and go like 100 miles. So, you come to realize that you chop down a tree or a tree basically falls and just rolls down. Why? Because it's circular, it's round. Say, well, why don't we just do that? And all of a sudden things become easier, Now, in regards to the loss of power of the church, the Roman emperor comes to realize that he's losing some power. This new tradition, this new cult we call Christianity is gaining a lot of power. The Roman paganism is losing power. Constantine is also losing his power as an emperor. So he says, what's the best thing we can do? Why don't I just come out and say Christianity is going to be the official religion? Now you have all these millions of people who are newly converted to this new religion. Now they'll be part of the Roman culture, you know. And so what you have is all of a sudden Romans who were pagans for hundreds and thousands of years all of a sudden become Christians. And that continues all the way to the 13th century. Something amazing happens in the 13th century, which is Europe is hit with a plague. There's only one church, and that's the Catholic Church, the most powerful. Okay? Almost 100 million people die. And these are like devout Christians. They want to figure out why is this happening? Is this like the compassion, the justice of God? Why is it that the priests die, but the prostitutes remain alive? You know, why is it that the sinners are still here and the righteous are gone? And so that's the first thing that happens. Then you have the war between countries that lasts for over 100 years. It's all revolving around religious ideas. There comes a point where you say, this does not make any sense. You know, then you have the emergence of science. And science doesn't work with faith. You know, it's like RFK, what he's doing to vaccines, you know, and all the stuff that's coming from the White House, versus 1,000 scientists who used to work in the White House and saying, this guy is nuts. Okay, so what you have is faith-based and science-based. There comes a point where you realize that your faith is not saving your life. You can believe all you want to believe in God. But if you don't think well about relationships, you will choose the wrong person for your life companion, and you'll end up in a divorce. And God forbid if you got 5 kids. And so science comes about because religion can no longer answer life's dilemmas. You know, I mean, consider what's his name? You know that guy, Galileo? He comes forth and what does he say? You know, it's not the sun that revolves around the earth, it's the other way around. It's this earth that revolves around the sun. But the church is not going to accept that. Why? Because when you read Genesis, this entire place was created for us. We have dominion over everything. Should you accept the position of Galileo, it means that you're nothing. Life is in the middle of nowhere. You know, and there comes a point where the church basically loses. And then it ceases to have very much power. I mean, religion right now, especially in the West, is in the very footnote of life. I mean, if you've ever bought anything, you know, there are big letters and there are small prints. The small prints you never care to read. They're far too tiny, and you find them to be insignificant. That's what religion is right now. It's insignificant. And add to the fact that for the first time in our human history, with the coming of factories and industrial revolution, we can actually find happiness down here. We don't need to wait to die to see God. Find a romantic relationship. Find a job that's an extension to your soul. You know, now you're a rational animal. You can think for yourself, figure things out for yourself. You don't need the Bible. You don't need prophets. You don't need revelation. You can be an intellectual. And it has never happened in our history, but for the first time, for the past maybe 150 years. You know why you raise your hand in class and ask questions? You're young. You don't know. You just entered life. You won't be raising your hand asking questions when you're like 50 or 60. You've been there. You've done that. People assume that they no longer really need superstition or religion or religious ideas. They can figure things out on their own. Some people can and many can't. Yeah.
How do you explain your relationship with memories and
I think they're both the same. I mean, you know, one of my friends, he just had his chest open. They have to do something with his heart. I hadn't spoken to these people for over like 30 years, but we went to high school together, college together. He used to give me a ride from Davis to Sacramento. So one day my brother calls and says, Amir, did you know that Ahmed is having a heart surgery? I say, who's he? Ahmed. Oh, yeah. And so I go back in time. You know, I remember all the wonderful things we used to do, like breaking into shops, stealing things, selling them, you know, buying bread, feeding the homeless, you know. Not really though, but Be nice. And so that memory creates all these emotions. So I pick up the phone and I call him. Said, Ahmed, how you doing? I hear, someone's going to like break your heart. Like open your chest. Yeah, my arteries are clogged. I said, well, let me tell you what you need to do. Some people don't really have very many fond memories. All they have are traumas. But if you have formed some nice ones, protect them. They're good. The what?
Is there a word to describe those bad memories?
Bad memories?
Yeah, you said trauma, but they can also remember that, but they're not necessarily memories. Like you said, grief and nostalgia, but you said those were trauma. Is there any other word?
Well, both trauma and things that create some romantic memories, they're always in the background. With nice memories, just in time you forget. With traumas, you forcefully try to forget. And then there comes a point where your garbage bin is just too full. And then everything just, it's like a toilet bowl that's clogged. And every time you flush, more shit comes out. So you get to a place in life where you try to get, flush it down, but it just refuses. You're like 30, 40, 50, 60, and you've come to realize everything that you have touched in your life has turned into crap, and there is no way to escape them now. Now, it takes time for an event to be categorized as a trauma. We talked about this, I think, the last time, or maybe not. That the only thing that life does is creates events. The only thing that we can do is interpret those events. Some events are physical, some events are emotional, and some events are spiritual, which we won't really get into. But what usually happens is we are creatures of sloth and comfort. So anything that comes into our life that creates disturbance, we are put on pause. We have no choice but to experience this thing called pain. Now, if you're lucky, the pain will go away or you'll forget. Sometimes there is a chance that this pain comes back again and again and again and again. It happens to be somewhat abusive. And in as much as you want to run away, you don't have the means to run away or to walk away. Now, because we don't do well with pain, what usually happens is first disturbing. You try to overcome it. You realize you can't. You're slightly irritated and annoyed. Then you try some more, but you can't. Now you're frustrated. You try to overcome that. You can't. You get to a place where there is a good amount of confusion. And then you become angry. And then you get sad and depressed because you try to get rid of this anger. You can't. You try to talk it to people. You can't. No one understands you. Then you find yourself in a very lonely place. Okay. Now, if this particular event keeps surfacing and showing its face, you begin to lose more control, more mental power, more emotional power. It basically begins to control or occupy a good amount of emotional and intellectual space. Little by little, this trauma will enter a place that I don't have any other word for it except your soul. It enters into your soul. It's like cancer, stage 27. Okay. Once you get to cancer stage 4 or 5 or 6 or 7, it has basically leaked into every part of your body. There is no cure. Okay. We call this chronic depression or chronic trauma. That it doesn't mean that you don't want to get rid of it. You do want to, you just don't have the tools, and it's way deep down. It's like roots are way, way, way down. Do you know what IVs are? So IVs are these like plants. They wrap themselves around trees. Okay. And their function is to get their nourishment from the tree. Eventually the tree gets hollowed out. The tree dies, but the ivy remains. So, and that's true for everything, whether it's love or trauma, doesn't really matter, or pain. What usually happens in some cases is that this disturbance in life is powerful enough to wrap itself around your emotions. You think about it all the time, you feel it all the time. And then because we don't do well with pain, your Messiah, the intellect, comes down to find a remedy for it. Now it occupies your mental space. First it was your physical, okay? Then it came to emotional, now it's your mental space. And it gets to a point where it just suffocates your interior. And then comes Tuesday morning, you want to get out, get to your class, but you say, I don't really feel like it. And then I don't really feel like it expands to, I don't really feel like going to work. I don't really feel like making food for my kids. I don't really feel like getting out of the bed. I just don't feel like living, period. Now, that particular trauma that lives inside your soul, there is no remedy for it unless there is someone out there who is kind enough, generous enough with their time, with their patience, with their money, with their life, to kind of shower you with everything that they possess. And you are a shot in the dark. In other words, out of 1,000 people who suffer chronically, one person gets healed. The rest, there's no hope. Usually people who are really, really experienced, they're not going to volunteer. It's usually who are the young nurses who just gotten the job 2, 3, 4, 5 years into the business. They have not yet been burnt out. They still have hope and dreams. One of the best novels that speaks about just read the novel. It's Albert Camus' The Plague. The Plague, I mean, it's not really that great. You don't really need to read it. It's, there are like 4 or 5 main characters in the book. One is the doctor. Doctors go to school 5, 6, 10, 15, 20 years. They try to understand the human body. They try to understand diseases. They try to understand or find cures for them. There comes a point in the book where the doctor throws down his instruments. Death is far too great. This disease is far too powerful. I can't do anything. And it's a very strange place for you to, for the first time, come to realize how incompetent and how impotent you really are as a human being. Despite all of your knowledge, you amount to nothing in the presence of death and sickness. Tiffany, and then.
Do you think that feeling bad for your oppressor is a form of oppression?
Feeling bad for who?
Like your oppressor, like somebody that you feel like does you harm? Like when you feel bad for them, is that a form of oppression of yourself? Like, are you like in a victim mentality and are you stuff like that?
So let me see if I understand you right. I am your husband, you are my wife. I drink, I smoke, and I am emotionally abusive, verbally abusive, and physically abusive. And you feel bad for me.
Yeah, like I said, yeah.
Yes.
Like,
Okay. So the way things usually start is that you and I go out on our first date. I'm not going to get drunk unless you're drunk and I'm drunk, and that's a different story. But you're a bit more healthy than I am. You're a bit more cultured and civilized than I am. So out of respect for our first date, I only drink 5 bottles. Okay, you just have like milk. And so as I get more comfortable, and that's the thing, as we get more comfortable, what lives inside you has a tendency of coming out, okay? As you and I get more comfortable, I come home and I drink. And I come home and I smoke. And once in a while you come out and say, don't drink so much. And your statement pisses me off, and so I drink even more. And I smoke even more. And, some people get intoxicated and they shout and scream. Some people become a bit more passive. They become quiet. I happen to be one of those shouters. I say, where's my dinner? I don't say thank you. I sit and watch TV. You kind of feel hurt, but it's the beginning of our relationship. You still have this romantic idea of love and sacrifice and patience and, the things that young people stupidly have. Then we have some good moments. You have sex. You're pregnant. I say, I'm not going to drink anymore, smoke anymore. But, I've been in the habit of smoking and drinking for the past 20 years just because I'm going to be a father. It doesn't mean anything, really. It's just a passing thing. I become a father. I realize the difficulties, the burdens. responsibilities, and it's too much. Dealing with my own issues, dealing with your issues, dealing with this thing that cries all the time. So instead of having 5 bottles, now I have 25 bottles. And you realize that, well, I am the only person working. I'm the only person who's bringing cash. I am paying for the rent, utilities, food. And there are hints that you want to leave, but you can't. And once in a while you see me with the kid. I hug him, I kiss him, I have a good time with him, play soccer with him, go kiting with him, all those things. Say, this is beautiful, gives you hopes and dreams. 2, 3, 4, 5 years pass by, and your capacity to be patient grows less and less and less. Now, for the first time in your life, you become very, very realistic. You look at your kid and you say, is this the environment I want this kid to be raised in? Is this the language I want him to be exposed to? Do I really want this kid to be exposed to the chaotic nature of this household? And if in the past you were in the kitchen for 5 hours making breakfast, lunch, and dinner, now you're there for half hour. Now when I come home and I say, where's my dinner? You say, fuck you, make it yourself. And just in case I shout, you grab the kid, you get in the car, and you go to your mom's. The truth is, first of all, when you speak about patience, English is not really the proper language. It doesn't really have the right vocabularies for it. In more evolved cultures that have been around here for a while, there is a station of maturity that trains you in patience. In other words, I deliberately put you in a very difficult situation so I can push buttons, so you could scream, and I remind you, don't scream, don't scream. And that allows you to be a bit more mindful, a bit more aware, and as a result, your capacity to be patient grows. But this is a very educated way of being in life, okay? And you're not just going to surround yourself with trashy people. You're very selective, okay, by the time you get there. There is this organic part to us that just knows how patience works and what you need to be patient with. And we do that organically. Like you're bored right now. There's a part that says, let me pack up my stuff and go. Then you say, you know what? I should be patient. There's only 10 minutes left. Okay. There comes a point where organically your trash bin is full. Okay. Now, there is this other aspect to it, which is you actually believe that there are people out there worth saving. And I'm not denying that. There are. But to save anyone requires time and patience. Now, for you to spend time on someone, it means that you have done 2 things. You have looked at time, you have looked at patience, you have looked at your youth, you've looked at your life. And you have selected the person you want to help. And you say, this person is worth my time, my life, and my patience. And then you willingly go and help them. And you also understand by this stage that, you know what? This person is going to backstab you for the next 5, 6, 7 years. But eventually they'll get it, hopefully. They're in the proper stage to listen, to hear, to watch, and to learn, hopefully to understand and apply. There is this other part to us where you just feel bad for someone who's suffering. Is it true that my father was an alcoholic? Yes. Is it true that my mother was a drug addict? Yes. Is it true I've inherited anger from them? Yes. Is it true I am the way I am because of them? Yes. Is it true that you feel sorry for my past? Yes. Is it true I'm a nice guy? Yes. Is it true that I'm held hostage by addiction? Yes. Is it true I abuse you? Yes. Do you feel bad for you and for me? Yes. Are you a victim? Yes. Am I a victim? Yes. Is life fair? The answer is no. What should you do? If I was you, I'd leave. You have the wrong definition for compassion, for empathy, forgiveness, for healing. You got to be very selective in life. It's like the way you choose your classes. You can take art classes or PE classes, but you say, listen, you know what? I want to graduate, and I don't want to be stuck at Laney for the next 50 years. And so you go see a counselor, and the counselor says, listen, when do you want to graduate? You say, like, by tomorrow. These are the classes you need to take. Do not deviate. There is a purpose. If you have a purpose that you want a decent person in your life, you know, that understanding will be a good GPS to your life. If on the other hand, you're like a leaf in the hands of the wind, then it doesn't really matter. I mean, you got to feel bad for people. I mean, life is tough. But just because, you know, people are suffering, it doesn't mean you should invite them to your life. Oh, I'm sorry. Devontae.
No. Okay, so I feel like you were talking to the young lady over here. You said,
Which young lady?
I forget your name. Is it Leah?
Ali?
Oh,
Oh, Leah.
yeah, Leah.
Yeah.
Okay. You were talking to her and you were saying something about people who follow religion. I swear I want to say you said you either choose that or intelligence. You truly feel that way? Like, do you feel like people who are religious are, like,
Adam?
or
No.
cannot believe in religion?
Look, if you want to survive, you need to believe in some goddamn thing out there.
Why not yourself?
Because you're a piece of shit, there is nothing about you to believe in.
Hey.
I mean, not you, I'm not talking about you. In general. You know, this all came about with Oprah Winfrey. Love yourself.
Yeah.
I have a 2-year-old.
That's good information. Don't do that.
No,
Like,
listen,
you really think-
I had a 2-year-old, and one day she starts talking back to me. So what the hell is wrong with you? I love myself, Dad. You're a fucking 2-year-old punk. There is nothing about you to like. You have zero life experience. You have no idea what you are, who you are, where you live, what you're doing. What is there to love? The way you view your romantic relationship is the same way you view self-love. First, you need to understand what the self is and how it's created. Okay? I mean, you are in no way, you have no hand in creating Devontae. You have an entire history, culture, creating desires inside you. Nothing about you belongs to you. Your skin color has given you a history you didn't ask for. And getting to know that history, 20 years time, at least. When you get to know that history a little bit, then you say, you know what? I am Devontae, African American, I love myself. And when someone says, well, why the fuck do you love yourself? Now you come with facts. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Say, I love myself because I'm Devontae. The hell is that?
So back to you people with religion.
Some people turn out to be like Noam Chomsky. They're just very rational. They're very detached. They're not very emotional. Some people are born like Mother Teresa. They're very emotional. Okay? Some people come from religious backgrounds. Some people come from very rational or scientific backgrounds. And there are different stages in our life. You know, it's like at the age of 19, you love romantic relationships. When you're burnt a few times, you say, you know what, now I want to go in there with an open mind and open eyes. I want to figure out who I'm dealing with. I don't want romance, I want stability. Romance is fun because it's ups and downs at the time. It's like, you know, living in a tsunami. It's exciting. Okay? When you're in a solid relationship and it's relatively healthy and like flatline, you know the future, you know the past, you know there's not going to be too many ups and downs, and it gets boring. I mean, both parts have issues. But one saves you when you get to be 90 on a wheelchair because your wife will take you to Kaiser. In romance, there is no such thing. Okay. Sometimes a religion doesn't nourish you. And so you want to gravitate towards something that appeals to your intellect. Sometimes you live in your head a bit too much and you want some nourishment that goes into your heart. Be a little bit of both, you know. And sometimes both happen to be a bit too much. You say, you know what? I don't want to hear science. I don't want to hear religion. I just want to have my ice cream. Just leave me alone. We are very complex. But don't self-love. If you look at human evolution, how we have advanced to this point, there came a point where people got disgusted with living in a cave, where people got disgusted riding a donkey. The only way we evolve and mature is there comes a point where you say, I no longer want to drink. I no longer want to be in these ridiculous relationships. You know, and that disgust pushes you into going to school. And then you say, I wasted my life. That's a good place. Disgust is not bad. I mean, you need to start, when you start your life and then you think it's going well until you realize you're just junk, and then you're disgusted, and that disgust pushes you into self-hatred. And you wallow in that for a while. And then you say, I'm tired of this. I need to move out of this particular space. And then you say, you know what? Maybe I should go to Laney College. Or maybe I should go to Yale. And it all because you stop loving yourself for all the wrong reasons. When you get your PhD, now you can self-love. Now you understand sacrifice, overcoming certain habits. Don't love yourself. Hate yourself. Good job.
All right, class. I guess we're ending on that.
That's it.